Hello guys, how are we all doing? I know it's getting late now. Today we are predicting week 5 of the Premier League, predictions. And we saw late nights as well as Barcelona beats Newcastle in the Champions League by 2 goals to 1. Brilliant from Marcus Rashford on his Barca debut, beating Newcastle by 2 goals to 1. And Man City beat Napoli beat 10 men and Napoli 2-0 from Erling Haaland and Jeremy Doku, but Jeremy Doku to beat Napoli 2-0. But then on to the big weekend, some big games coming up, including Man United and Chelsea, and Arsenal versus Man City, Liverpool, Everton, the Merseyside derby. Before you get into the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. So first up, Liverpool versus Everton. We have a first Merseyside derby of the season at Anfield this weekend as defending champions Liverpool welcome an intriguing and entertaining Everton across the city. It's been a bizarre start to the season for Liverpool, with the Reds having begun with 5 successive victories across all competitions, but all 5 matches have required Liverpool scoring a late winner, with 3 of them seeing them to give up a 2-0 lead. And one of those he came in midweek as they went into a 2-0 lead against Atletico Madrid before being pegged back by losses Barcelas in the Champions League. Virgil van Dijk popped up with a second half stoppage time header to win the clash though. As for Everton, David Moyes and his Everton side coming into this one on the back of a goalless draw against Aston Villa and a Hill Dixon Stadium to extend their unbeaten run to 4 matches in all competitions since the opening day of the season, after a busy summer transfer window as they prepared to move into their second new home. The Toffees have built an impressive and an exciting squad, with Manchester City alone Jack Grealish appearing to be approaching his best form once again. Liverpool were underwhelming in a 1-0 victory over newly promoted Burnley at Turf Moor last weekend, but there is a few that they are concerned about over the fluency in their attack, but their defence solitary, and yet they kept on winning as they work things out. Everton, though, will surely fancy their chances of getting at the Reds here, especially with their newfound quality in the final third. Liverpool have to remain favourites with home advantage, but unlike a lot of Merseyside derbies, this should be a fun watch for the neutral. I'm going for Liverpool to win 2-0, but not that easy. Right, let's move on to a 3 o'clock game at the Amex Stadium. This is an intriguing contest at the Amex Stadium as Brighton and Hove Albion welcome to what appears to be a strong Tottenham Hotspur side down to the south coast this week. And Brighton and Hove Albion have begun 2025-26 Premier League season with 1 victory in their opening 4 matches so far this season, with that 1 win coming from behind against Manchester City at the Amex Stadium a couple of weeks ago. Having returned from September international break, they're coming into this one on the back of a hard-fought 2-1 defeat to FC Bournemouth at the Vitality Stadium last weekend due to the 61st minute Anton Semenyo winning penalty. And Tottenham Hotspur have begun a new era with the appointment of arch protagonist Thomas Frank, replacing tactical Idealu Ange Postecoglou. Thomas the Frank engine, not Thomas the Tank engine, I'm only joking, but Spurs have started the season well too, but that continued in midweek. Spurs have managed to head past Villarreal by a 1-0 in the Champions League in midweek, a few days after they managed to defeat West Ham United by 3-0 at the London Stadium. The issues for Thomas Frank this season could be whether or not he is capable of dealing with the relentlessness, having balanced their Premier League and the Champions League commitments, but they face a Brighton side that, with their home advantages, have been able to topple Manchester City this season, and their performances are better than the results would suggest. So siding with Brighton at home would appear a reasonably good value bet for this one. I'm going for Brighton 1, Spurs 2. And right, let's go to the London Stadium where West Ham United facing Crystal Palace. There is another London derby for West Ham United to concern themselves as the pressure mounts on Graham Potter ahead of the visits of a strong Crystal Palace side. West Ham United coming into this one on the back of a 3-0 hammering at the hands of Tottenham Hotspur at the London Stadium last weekend. There are suggestions that a defeat here could be the end of Graham Potter's stint in charge of the Irons. The Hammers have conceded 11 goals in 3 games this season against Sunderland, Chelsea and Spurs, with a 3-0 win at Nottingham Forest with 3 late goals against a team about to sack the manager Nuno Espirito Santo, looking even more unglamorous. Crystal Palace started the 2025-26 season by winning their second ever piece of silverware as they defeated Liverpool on penalties in the Community Shield at the Wembley Stadium, but they are now unbeaten in 8 matches so far this season. But that unbeaten run was extended in midweek against South London rivals Millwall in the 3rd round of the EFL Cup as they defeated the Lions on the penalties, but they are struggling for fluency in attack at the moment, but they remain restored at the back. Crystal Palace may eventually struggle to deal with the Europa Conference League commitments alongside their domestic outings, but they don't have to worry about that just yet. But the Eagles remain very tight and difficult to beat, but it appears to be the matter of time before attack clicks. West Ham are not a difficult to beat or score against, but also look a bit of mish-mash going forward. So this could spell the end of Potter. Palace are playing better football than West Ham. I'm going West Ham 1, Crystal Palace 2. Right. Ooh. Let's go for Wolves against Leeds. If you have a relegation 6-pointer in mid-September, then this clash falls into that category, as Wolverhampton Wanderers welcome Leeds United to Molineux this week. Wolverhampton Wanderers are reportedly set to hand a contract to the manager Victor Pioro, despite the fact that Wolves have suffered 4 defeats from 4 so far this season. So after what was a difficult summer transfer window, Wolves were improved as their most recent outing against Newcastle United at St James's Park. But then they again suffered a 1-0 loss due to the 29th minute of Nick Watermaid header leaving Wolves as the only pointless team in the Premier League against Newcastle United at St James's Park. So Leeds, following their promotion to the Premier League last season, Leeds United dismissed it. Reports that Daniel Farke was still set to be sacked, but despite that vote of confidence, does still feel like there is a lot of pressure on the former Norwich City boss. Leeds had only lost to Arsenal so far this season before last weekend's heartache at Craven Cottage in a tight game, and that was about to see Leeds secure a point against Fulham. They conceded 94th minute, but Gabriel Goodmanson's own goal to lose. Home advantage and their woeful start will add immense pressure to the game that Wolves now simply have to win, especially in the small section of the fan base, beginning to question Piore. Leeds have proved themselves difficult to beat and score against, keeping clean sheets against Everton and Newcastle before that loss to Fulham. Given that Wolves' issues going forward, siding with Leeds may well be a reasonable bet, but I think Wolves are due a win surely and due to get points on the board, but I'm going for like a sneaky one that Wolves will beat Leeds 2-1. How do you like them apples? Right, Burnley versus Nottingham Forest. This is a really intriguing contest because of a defeat for the visitors could quite remarkably lead their to their new manager coming under the almost immediate pressure. Scott Parker is a manager that has been able to get teams to buy into a very humble approach, and to pull it politely, but it is likely going to be on their only real efficiently way of securing survival this season. But winning games like this will be crucial. They lost to Tottenham Hotspur, then defeated Sunderland before suffering the second half stoppage time, winning penalties against both Manchester United and Liverpool after performances in which they have been supremely resolved. But they're really acquitting themselves very well. As for Nottingham Forest, despite their best season in over 30 years, Nuno Espirito Santo was sacked 3 matches into this season. Due to their off-field arguments, they have been replaced by Ange Postecoglou, who led Tottenham to the 17th place in the finish in the Premier League last year. Postecoglou's reign at the City ground began with a 3-0 loss against Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium last weekend, before suffering a 3-2 defeat to the Championship side Swansea City in the third round of the EFL Cup in midweek, having been 2-0 up. Typically, Postecoglou has been absorbs and brash in pre-match press conferences, and it has been discussed about how this isn't a project, but the fact he has also won trophies in his first season. Well, one of those trophies on offer has now gone. He has discussed one to impose his pinnacles with immediate effect. That is unusual because his pinnacles led to a humiliating domestic season for Spurs last year, with his predecessor's pinnacles led Forest to a major achievement. It would be a shock if Forest's players aren't too keen on his heroic Burnley. With home advantage, their extremely good defence, they will make things difficult for a team sneaking immediately attacking fluency and a fair. As a result, siding with the Clarets seems a reasonable bet, but I'm going for a 1-1 draw. 1-1 draw. Right, 5:30 kickoff between Man United and Chelsea. There are a couple of matches that could define their futures of Premier League matches this weekend. One of them comes here as Manchester United face Chelsea. These are suggestions that the entry at Manchester United are becoming more and more impatient with the manager Ruben Amorim, as the Red Devils suffered a 3-0 hammering at the hands of Manchester City at the derby last weekend. Aside from their humiliation in the EFL Cup against Grimsby Town, as well as home to Fulham in the Premier League FA Cup last year, and their Europa League final defeat to Tottenham Hotspur, it has now managed 8 victories in 31 Premier League matches. And as for Maresca's Blues, after finishing 5th and earning a Champions League qualification, then winning the Europa Conference League, then winning the FIFA Cup, World Cup, things were looking up for Enzo Maresca and Chelsea, but has been a tricky start. They have limited pre-season as a result as of the FIFA Cup, World Cup, but they have managed just 2 victories in their opening 5 matches across all competitions. They were beaten by Bayern Munich in the Champions League in midweek. Manchester United have shown general signs of more coherent patterns of play in the final third of the pitch. The Red Devils, though, are far too easy to get, but they simply don't have the midfield but personnel to dominate a Premier League game in a system that Amorim is choosing. Will stick to. Chelsea head to Old Trafford needing a performance, and Enzo Fernandez and Moyes Caicedo should simply able to easily eventually wrestle control the match for the Blues, but I'm going for a 2-0 win for Chelsea. And right. Where's Fulham versus Brentford? Right, there we go. Okay, it's an early season that has seen plenty of London derbies, and we now have a clash of the west of the city as Fulham welcomed local rivals Brentford to Craven Cottage this week. Fulham coming into this one on the back of a slender and unconvincing victory against Leeds United, which the Cottagers benefited from a remarkable 94th minute own goal scored by Sweden international left back Gabriel Gudmundsson. Marco Silva's side have been risk stagnation with the Portuguese coach surprisingly still at the club. They were underwhelming in the first half of the season, but will hope some late summer transfer window business will give them a major boost. Over the summer, Keith Andrews was given his first managerial role as being Brentford's set-piece coach due to Thomas Frank's departure to Tottenham Hotspur. Key men Mark Flecken, Christian Nordegaard and Brian Mabermo. Joa Wieser also left. Despite that overhaul, Brentford have actually started the season with some good performances since the 3-1 loss to Nottingham Forest on the opening day. They most recently shared a 2-2 draw with Chelsea and in Getch Community Stadium last week, and they did beat Aston Villa in the Carabao Cup third round on 4-2 on penalties. This is corresponding fixture last season in the autumn. Fulham were behind until the second half stoppage time before substitute Harry Wilson scored a spectacular match-winning brace, and that was a more contested contest than usual. But with both sides actually often playing on the front foot, quite a lot of pass, but producing some entertaining clashes. Fulham appeared due to click in the final third, with a club record signing Kevin now in the mix, while Brentford have a range of threats. And so both teams scoring seems a good shout, but I'm going 2-1 to Fulham. Right, let's move on to Bournemouth taking on Newcastle. FC Bournemouth will be aiming to get themselves into European competition this season, as the Cherries now welcome Newcastle United down to the south coast. A long road for the Newcastle fans Bournemouth, after collapsing away from the top 7 in the European spots last season. FC Bournemouth have lost several key players, but manager Andolo Loleo has remained. The Cherries will once again be trying to push with their intense style of play. They have started their campaign with 3 victories on their opening 4 matches. They're coming into this one off the back of a hard-fought 2-1 defeat of South Coast rivals Brighton over Albion at the Vitality Stadium last weekend. Newcastle coming into this one of a 2-1 loss at home to Barcelona, kicking off their league phase campaign in the Champions League tonight. Marcus Rashford notches a brace for the Bologera before Anthony Gordon scored a consolation. That defeat now does now mean that Newcastle have won just one of their opening 5 matches across all competitions, with that coming by a 0-0 against Wolverhampton Wanderers last week, courtesy of a Nick Watermaid winner. Eddie Howe is returning to Bournemouth with a Newcastle side that could really do with avoiding defeat this weekend. Having started the season quite slowly amid deliberate call over Alexander Isak saga, Bournemouth are an excellent team that play brilliant football with a wonderful coach, but they get on the front foot. But the visitors should find openings on the counter-attack, with a good watch for the neutrals to be expected. I think Newcastle will bounce back after a 2-1 loss to Barcelona in Champions League, but I think Newcastle will win 2-1. That's a fair result. Right, Sunderland versus Aston Villa. It's been a bright start to their return to the Premier League for Sunderland, as the Black Cats now prepared to take on a struggling Aston Villa's side at the Stadium of Light. Sunderland, in their opening couple of matches at home, Sunderland have managed to defeat both West Ham United and Brentford emphatically. 3-0 victory over the Irons, was followed by the stirring and dramatic turnaround against the Bees a fortnight later. Even on the rent, Regis de Breeze then had seemingly found a way of blurting opposition with a goalless draw against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park last weekend. They did suffer a 2-0 loss to Burnley at Turf Moor last month, though. As for Aston Villa have had a woeful start to the season, but that continued in midweek. But they were eliminated from the AFL Cup at the third round stage by Brentford, losing to the Bees on penalties at the G-Tech Community Stadium after what have been a 1-1 draw. The Villains have started a league campaign miserably too, with a goalless draw at the Hill Dixon Stadium against Everton last weekend, meaning that they have collected just 2 points and are yet to score from their opening 4 matches. Aston Villa have endured a very difficult summer, and profit and sustainability rules forced them to do a little business, having missed out on the Champions League qualification. Sunderland will be riding an aggressive wave heading into this one, and a logic could be dictated that they should be backed here. However, this remains a newly promoted team against one of the best coaches in Europe, and Villa won't go too much longer without a victory, so it would be a surprise to see them finally turn up. But I think Villa will get over the line, but to get their first win of the campaign, I'm going Sunderland 1, Villa 2. It depends what Villa turns up for me. Looking like a real mess, but a lot of people were backing Sunderland, but yeah. Right, and finally, saying till last, the big one, Arsenal versus Man City. This game has been clash between 2 best teams in England for much of the last few years, but that is no longer the case with Manchester City sliding away from the top. Mikel Arteta has been granted a deep squad with a lot of money over the summer to fight all 4 fronts. The Gunners have started their Champions League campaign with a 2-0 win over Athletic Club as Sam Mayers in Bilbao on the other day. Arsenal, who have been runner-ups in each of their last 3 seasons, managed to make it 9 points from their opening 4 Premier League matches, with a comfortable 3-0 defeat of Nottingham Forest at the Emirates Stadium last weekend. Pep Guardiola needs to find some consistency with this Manchester City side, who have been underwhelming for around 12 months now. The systems do coming into this one of a back-to-back nil victories since the international break. They dispatched the rivals Manchester United in the derby last weekend by 3-0. But West Ham versus Crystal Palace coming on the back of a 0-0 draw against Sunderland, and also Right, let's focus on Arsenal versus Man City. But before they then eased past 10 men Napoli by 2-0 in midweek tonight, which was once again fairly indifferent but disjointed the performance. Arsenal have been all bases covered, but they have been solitary. They have been ingrained into them by Mikel Arteta in recent seasons, with a bit more attacking intent and quality this season. Manchester City still finished 3rd last season, but they have that 3rd last year. But there just seems to be something unfixable at the moment, at least in terms of making them a dominant force. They want their home advantage form, an extra couple of days rest for European commitments, but should mark Arsenal out as slight firm favourites in North London. But I'm going for Desmond. I'm going for 2-2. That's my predictions then for week 5 for the Premier League. Leave them in the comments below, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye. Peace out. Good night.